And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com, brought to you in part by Yahoo DFS. We'll talk more about them momentarily. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Wednesday morning. We are looking at 4 early games. We're going to set you up for those 4 games. Make sure we go in depth here. And then we'll talk about the late slate on our MLB DFS strategy show. We'll talk about that on Deeper Dive, Live Before Lock. Tons of free content over there on YouTube. And also, of course, we'll have projections and all that and more behind the paywall. But as always, outside of me rambling, I'd like to check in. Dave, how the hell are you doing?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. We got about 13 days left of the MLB season.
Not that you're counting.
Oh, I'm counting every day.
Do you know how many days till NBA? That's the bigger.
I think we got like a month and a week, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think it was like the 24th of October. Let me see. So it starts on October 22nd. All right, that's two days off, but a month and a week.
Better late than early.
Yes. Wait, no. What?
Better late than early. I mean, I think that's a general life rule, right? Better late than early? No?
I hadn't heard that one before, but I don't know. Sure.
I mean, apply it to whatever you like, but I think better. I prefer to be late than to be early.
Really?
I don't know. Well, no, I'm early to everything, so
I'm not.
I am.
I'm right on time.
See, my mother was early to everything, so I'm early to everything. Single parent household. My wife's father is early to everything. Her mother was late to everything, so she's sort of in between. So we end up being late because we have 3 kids now. And I don't get anxiety about much. When I'm late to something, that's where I start getting
right. Well, Justine's the same way. Now I have this uncanny ability, Dan, to make her think that we're in serious trouble. But I have this internal clock where I just know we can leave at this time. We'll get there by this time. And, 50% of the time it works every time. So I'll tell you what, man, I'm good at it. I don't need to get there early, but I also don't want to get there late. I feel you. But better late than early. All right, that doesn't work in most professional or real life scenarios.
That's fair. All right, then we'll take it back. We'll start from the top. And away no, just kidding. Let's continue on here on this episode of the DFS Early Bird. As I said, brought to you by Yahoo DFS. They have break-free contests over there. So you'll want to check that out. You want to check out their offerings each and every week. The $1 Million Baller, that is the prize of their DFS NFL offerings. You want to check that out. Also, MLB still going strong over there. So check out their offerings. You can use promo code Osmo to get you $30 in Yahoo Sportsbucks. That is as good as dollars there on the site. Can't withdraw it, but you can use it towards contests. So if you're playing in the $3 or the $10, you get multiple entries.
And then you can withdraw it.
Right. Once you win, you can take it out.
I mean, if you're dumb enough to think that you can just, withdraw it by not playing it. I mean, what type of business model is that?
That would be a poor one.
Yeah.
That would be a poor one. But let's talk about these 4 games. We're going to go game by game here just to break each one down, give you an inside look at what Dave's looking at, what I'm looking at here early on for this early slate, and then we'll leave the late slate to later on. Cards and Nats, Scherzer v. Wainwright, Washington minus 155 on the money line. 7.5 over under. So if you're on FanDuel, this game is on the slate, and that's what we'll focus here first. Scherzer at 10-4, Wainwright at 8-4. But we take a look at this one and try to break it down to understand that Scherzer, obviously a top flight talent. St. Louis Cardinals, a team that can struggle on offense. We're talking with Randone on Sunday about this. This is a Cardinals team, Dave, that somehow is in first place in the NL Central. They seem like the most untalked about team in Major League Baseball. They've been good. They don't have any pitcher that you go, wow, yeah, I know exactly who that is, and he's having a stellar year. But they're still right there in the thick of things in the Central. Scherzer getting ramped back up after coming off the injured list. He is clearly the best, if not one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, but we've had to been a little bit cautious with him simply because the pitch count hasn't been there. The innings pitch haven't been there. How do you break down this contest from a pitching standpoint? Then we'll talk about some of the bats.
But doesn't it feel like St. Louis does this every season?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's black magic. It's how they get Aledmys Diaz to be one of the best hitters in baseball for 6 months out of the year.
I mean, Paul Goldschmidt through the first several months is like, all right, well, this isn't working out. And now, like you said, the team's in the first place in the NL Central. And it's not like it's this god-awful division. There's a couple good teams there. It is crazy. There's no question. And like you said, there's no pitching where you look at it and you're like, well, those guys are the true workhorses. You know, they're the anchors to this team. No, it's not the case whatsoever. There are a few guys that have held it together. Like, for example, Dakota Hudson, he's been all right. Not great, but he's not losing games for him. Wainwright isn't losing games for him. Miles Michaelis isn't losing games for him. That's kind of what it's come down to. These guys are just good enough to not lose games for him. And, you know, sometimes they actually seem to win games for them. But, yeah, I didn't see it coming. I knew they'd be a respectable team because every season they are. But I wasn't anticipating this happening this season at all. But here we are. Again, just not a big surprise. It kind of comes with the territory. But I still think, you know, Scherzer on a slate where, you know, if you look at the rest of pitching, it's Scherzer, Wainwright, Mike Leake, Homer Bailey, Syndergaard's at Coors 7,900, Sandy Alcantara against Arizona, Duffy, Jeff Hoffman. Like, I don't really think there's any denying that Scherzer is your top option here. What his pitch count will look like, I don't know. You know, he's gone 6 and 5 innings over his last 3 starts. A couple of them he got into a little bit of trouble in that last frame, and you saw you saw him get pulled, but he generally would have been able to go deeper than that. It's just he wasn't looking as good as he normally would. But when you stack him up next to really anybody else on this 4-game slate, only on FanDuel, of course, you start to see why, you know, Max Scherzer just seems to make more sense than anyone else. His pitch count over his last 3 – actually, I'm going to have to pull it up. Oh, I thought I'd have it right there. That's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, FanDuel's UI is not as
I was even on FanGraphs. Let me go. Or I was on FanGraphs. Thought they'd have it. I forgot they don't have it on the game log.
Oh, right. That's right. Yep.
There's a bunch of different places I can go to, but usually I'll just look on the DraftKings player page. Makes it easier, you know. But I would assume that he'll be okay. Okay, hold on. I got it. I'm just going to go to Brooks. So game, let's see what we got here, Dan. Because it is obviously the biggest concern is how many pitches can he throw. Outside of that, you're not worried. So last game, let's see, 34, 42, 53. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, dude, he's back up. He's back up where he needs to be. Big time. Yeah, he's good.
All right. So it seems like a comfortable spot where Scherzer going to play on the talent here. Obviously, this is a Cardinals team middling of the pack when it comes to strikeouts against righties. I think they're around 22, 23%. Not a ton of necessary power, 166 ISO, 93 WRC plus. So Scherzer makes a ton of sense. Wainwright on the other side, is he too susceptible to the power of the Nats bats, or is he at least in consideration on FanDuel where it is a one-pitcher site and he's $8,400?
I'm not totally against the idea of it. I mean, I think the price point is obviously going to come into play pretty big here, but he'd probably be more appealing if he was on all of these other sites where you had to roster a second pitcher. But against righties, he has been good. I mean, 289 WOBA, 131 ISO, and 0.7 home runs per 9 this year. I mean, those are good numbers. There's no denying that. And let's see, like the lineup you're going to get would be 1, 2, Eaton, Soto, as Drupal Cabrera, probably. That's. I don't think you're going to have that many lefties here because Matt Adams will probably still be out with that shoulder.
Yep.
If you only have 3 lefties, you know, it's certainly not the craziest idea. It's just a matter of, do you want to pay 84 for Wainwright or 10 for Scherzer? It seems to make a lot more sense to go to Scherzer, even though I don't actually hate this matchup for Wainwright.
Yeah, and then we take a look at the rest of this roster of pitchers for FanDuel. You have Leak, as you said, Bailey, 83, 8,200 respectively. Noah Syndergaard in Coors Field at 7,900. Sandy Alcantara, currently listed as the starter for the Miami Marlins at 7,800. Danny Duffy at 7,400 against the Oakland A's, and Jeff Hoffman in Coors Field at 5,800. We'll confirm, obviously, as we're recording all of the starters, and we can take the pivot to use DraftKings and FanDuel prices as we move into the next game. But from an offensive perspective, any bats that you do really like as one-offs? I know we've talked many times over about lefty power bats. Again, Scherzer as one-offs. Anybody that stands out or any sort of pieces that you want people to keep an eye on going into Wednesday's early slate?
Wainwright does give up around the 200 ISO to lefties. So Juan Soto to me would be a really strong play here, batting cleanup. If you wanted to go to Cabrera, he is better. He's a switch hitter, better from the left side of the plate. But outside of that, no. I mean, I'm not really looking to pick on Max Scherzer, and a Washington stack doesn't really seem like it's in play here. So I think the one guy would be Soto, maybe Cabrera if necessary. But Soto is actually a really strong play here against a decent enough pitcher, but someone who's surely struggled with opposite-handed bats. 355 WOBA, 198 ISO, 172 WHIP this season, and a 512 xFIP against lefties.
All right, let's talk Mets, Rockies next. You mentioned Coors Field. We have Coors slate here, minus 145 for the Mets, 13 over under. Noah Syndergaard versus Jeff Hoffman. Any hot takes, I guess, or sports radio commentary on the Noah Syndergaard, Wilson Ramos saga that has now spilled over to where Rene Rivera will be catching for Syndergaard on Tuesday in Coors Field rather than a hotter hitting Wilson Ramos?
Well, you're a New York guy. You'd have a better pulse on it than I would. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
It seems as though multiple sources, quote unquote, have come out saying that Syndergaard doesn't like throwing to Wilson Ramos. Mike Petrillo from, I think he's from MLB.com now. I have to double check. Used to be with Fangraphs. Is one of the good Twitter followers for advanced metrics and baseball analysis. They're not that far off. You look at Nido versus Ramos. It just is probably a sequence for Syndergaard. He doesn't like the way Ramos calls the game and has made that known. There's enough going on with the Mets and Syndergaard. He was almost traded by July 31st. This is just the pot boiling over, I think. I think the Mets are going to have to make a move in the offseason, either to satiate Syndergaard and say, here's your catcher, here's the guy that we were going forward with, or to trade him. And so Mickey Callaway is trying to catch lightning in a bottle here, end of season, make a run at the wild card. They're not going to get there. I don't mind it. I just hate taking Ramos's bat out of the lineup in Coors Field for Rene Rivera. But I think from a Syndergaard perspective, I like it enough. You hope his confidence is higher. Do you go to him, though, here on DK's 9K? On FanDuel, he's cheap enough, to be honest, at 7,900. Do you see enough upside against this Colorado team? You take Story and Arenado out of the conversation to an extent, obviously. Having a righty on the mound, is Syndergaard a high enough upside K guy here in Coors Field to maybe make a play at cheaper price points?
So, by the way, it is crazy that his ERA, and I'm just going off this because I don't have advanced metrics by catcher split, but is more than twice as high with Ramos than it is with Thomas Nido.
Yep.
So, that 15 home runs with Ramos, this is crazy. Only 3 with Thomas Nido. I mean, I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. And I personally don't have any idea what it's worth. So
it is. So to point out, Petrillo is over on MLB.com and has a full breakdown of the stats between Thomas Nido and Wilson Ramos.
Oh, gotcha.
It's actually, and it's all advanced metrics. It's not as quote unquote clear cut because advanced metrics never are, but it is an interesting read. I'll share it out on the Twitter machine. But take here on Syndergaard at Coors.
No, just zero interest whatsoever. No. 9K at Coors for a dude that, once in a while finishes with more than 20 fantasy points. No, I'm okay there. I will happily pass. I really have no interest. And I'm not against playing certain guys at Coors if it makes sense. But, I probably wouldn't pay $9K for Syndergaard against the Pirates in PNC, so I'm certainly not doing it at Coors.
How about the other side of this contest? Jeff Hoffman, I assume, is off the radar for you. He's $4,200, though. Is that cheap enough at Coors, or is that just walking into the Lions' den and sticking your head in the Lions' mouth?
No, you'd need to pay me. You'd need to give me like $4K extra salary.
That's fair. That would be a fun game. That'd be a fun game, and I'm not saying for cash. I'm not saying we need to reinvent DFS, but if we could have that sort of variability amongst pitchers where we get extra salary at times, it could be an enjoyable contest, maybe for free or not. Bats here, is everybody in play for you, or does Syndergaard at least take you off of the Arenados and Stories of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love this spot for the Rockies. Like, he's still an above average pitcher, but it's still a really awful spot for Noah Syndergaard. And the weather's been really warm there. I mean, it's been cool in a lot of spots. Not cool, but 60s, low 70s in the Northeast. We've seen a lot of that recently. But Coors has been really hot. It's going to be 81 degrees at first pitch. So it's nothing crazy, but it's not favorable pitching weather either. So I think that's probably worth keeping in mind. Right now, the implied total for the Rockies is still 6, So look, Blackmon, really anyone. I think Blackmon's obviously and Arenado and Story, those guys you can always play at Coors, especially on such a small slate. But if you can get discounts somewhere, then I would definitely recommend it. Like Daniel Murphy's $3,900 on DraftKings. McMahon is $4,200. These guys are really inexpensive, and that makes it easier to justify rostering them with the Coors stack. So keep that in mind, man. A lot of these guys are super, super cheap. Now, granted, many of them are not very good, but Raimel Tapia is $3,400, Dan, at Coors, which means that you can actually stack this game, at least stack the Rockies really easy at Coors Field. And I would also recommend that if you are, looking to round out a lineup, if you're hand-making stacks here, consider Syndergaard's issues when it comes to speed.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest weaknesses he has is his inability to hold runners. And, I think we forget about this a lot when we're picking batters and choosing stacks, who is easy to steal on and who isn't. Well, Noah Syndergaard certainly is not good at holding runners. We've known this for a very long time. Actually, for a while, the majority of this Mets staff, pitching staff, has been bad at holding
Absolutely.
runners. I mean, listen, 48 stolen bases allowed in 2016 in 31 starts. 25 starts last year, he allowed 32. 29 starts this year, he's allowed 34 stolen bases. I mean, he's averaging more than a stolen base per game.
Yep.
Right? In 2016, it was 1.5 stolen bases per game. He's probably the worst in the league when it comes to holding runners. So just because he might not give up 3 home runs doesn't mean he might not give up 4 stolen bases and a handful of doubles in one of the most spacious outfields in the league.
I will point out that -145, 13 over under, as said, for the Mets and Rockies here. That's a line to keep an eye on as well. Just during the morning, see if it shifts at all. Shouldn't shift too much, but could be a fun one depending on the weather, as Dave was pointing out, in Coors Field. Up next, Royals and Athletics. Oakland -220, 9.5 over under. Homer Bailey on the mound against Danny Duffy. This would seem like a tragic spot for Duffy against a pretty righty power-heavy lineup for the A's. But this is an Oakland team, again, talking about the Cardinals. The average fan, and not to call anyone out, the average fan, baseball fan, if I said name the starting 9 for the Oakland A's, no idea. Like, you have a struggle to name some of these guys. Who's the closer? Well, I don't even know if the manager knows who the closer is, but like, it's a situation in Oakland where this team is surging, and you try to take that into account when talking about baseball, but it's hard when you're dealing with numbers specifically. And here they are against Danny Duffy. Would seem like a prime spot for get right for a guy like Chris Davis and the other power bats, but taking the pitching first, Duffy and Bailey. I would assume Bailey is at least on the radar, right? This is a guy that has a price point that's not too overpowering at $7,800. A KC team that doesn't strike out a ton, but also doesn't hit for a ton of power. Is Bailey at least part of this early designation of at least in the player pool as we break it down.
Yes, he is. Let me touch on the Mets real quick, though, before we
Oh,
get to
sure.
this.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
It's pretty self-explanatory. I get that, but I just want to point it out because it's such a small slate, and I'm trying not to miss anything. 7.2 run implied total, Dan. They're 150 favorites on the road for whatever that's worth. Like you mentioned, 13 over under. Look, I think Colorado actually might be more popular than the Mets. Don't take my word for it, but to me, it would be sensible just based on how cheap they are. But people are going to still do everything they can to get them in the lineups, and that's because pitching is just inexpensive, which leads us to Homer Bailey. But just quickly, with this Mets squad, whether it's McNeil, Conforto, Brandon Nimmo is still too cheap. He'll likely lead off again. Really, who's ever in the lineup is who you're likely going to want to target in this game. And as you pointed out, keep an eye on what we see at catcher, because if Nito's in there, he's $3,200 on DraftKings compared to $4,400 Wilson Ramos. And while Ramos is definitely an offensive upgrade, Coors Field can make bad players look good. So that's that. I do think Colorado will have a ton of ownership, though, and one of the reasons for that is guys like Homer Bailey at 7,800 are going to be chalky because we have 3 games and we don't have really any. Your most expensive pitcher on DraftKings is Noah Syndergaard at Coors. Now on FanDuel, it's a different story because you're likely going to have a lot of Max Scherzer. Maybe you want to go with Homer Bailey. Okay, understandable. I get that. He really hasn't been that bad. Or you want to go with Mike Leake. I like that. I'm fine with it. I don't like it, but I'm fine with it. Or, of course, you go with Max Scherzer. But I think that, you'll see a mix of those 3 guys because everyone's going to want to load up on Coors. And, in this Rockies game, it's not much different. Like Murphy, really cheap. Alonso, really expensive. Second base. McMahon's pretty expensive. But Cano or whoever is going to start at second is cheap. Arenado's 45. Frazier's cheap. This is kind of weird when you look at it. The Rocky Bats are way more expensive as a team, as a collective, than the Mets are. So that'll definitely make things more interesting on FanDuel. On DraftKings, there's a huge discrepancy. The Mets are a lot more expensive than the Rockies, and they should be. But I like Bailey, Dan. And look, he's got a good splitter. His stuff is good enough to put up decent numbers. I don't expect him to go for 30 fantasy points, but if he gives you 20 here or, 23, 24 with the win, I don't think it's crazy to believe that's possible against this former team. He's pitching in a very, very friendly park for pitchers. And, he's in games that he's pitched in Oakland since being moved. He's been very good and he hasn't allowed any power. So, yeah, I expect this to be a chalky spot. And the next game we get to, we have one as well. But a 4-run implied total 3.8 run implied total for Oakland. That is the lowest on the slate. Homer Bailey's a minus 220 favorite at home. Yeah, he's going to be very popular.
Yeah, I assume that is where you see a lot of ownership going. And on the other side, Danny Duffy has shown us glimpses over his career of being an SP1, but has just never come to be. Injuries and implosions have led us away from him. But I assume there's no real interest. 6,400, if you're playing multiple lineups, you're entering 150, then you might get some sort of percentage of him clearly because it's a 3-game, or if you're on FanDuel, a 4-game slate where you might just get a bit because of how lineup breakdowns come down. But if we look at the offenses here, I just want to point out, again, talking about the A's, and I don't mean to harp on them, but I've done it many times here on the podcast, on the year against lefties, a 19.4% K percentage, a 113 WRC plus, ISO of 219. And this is a team that has just been absolutely killing the ball over the past month or so. Can't really quantify that. Can't say when on any single slate that it's going to stop. But they've clearly been one of the better offenses in baseball. And you throw the guys like Canha and Chris Davis and these righty power bats, even a Chad Pinder and Profar and Semien. These are guys that just have power against lefties. looking at strikeout percentages, Semion's at 13.3% against lefties, Canha 17.5. Crush Davis, the guy who for the longest time has been batting 247, has a sub 20% strikeout percentage against lefties. That's an impressive number, and this seems like a great offense to go after. I assume they are priced accordingly. Let's see. Chris Davis is $3,600.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
roster Chris Davis.
I think you make some good points, and this team's been really unbelievably good against lefties. Like you just rattled off some of the numbers. I don't need to go further. They've been phenomenal against lefties. Now, you know, the one knock here is the park compared to Coors.
Yep.
You know, the weather and whatever. But I think what I expect to see is Colorado. No, Mets will be the highest owned team because you don't have to pay for any pitching. And then I think it'll be Colorado and then Oakland. But I think Oakland will be pretty close. So I definitely like them a lot. I would put them in terms of like, you know, Alex has the top stack probability tool, or just his top stack tool, but it gives you top stack probability on each team. I think I would put Oakland, if just guessing, right, what it's going to look like. I think Oakland would be second behind the Mets here. Maybe not, but they'll at least, put it this way, they'll at least be very close to Colorado.
Yep, I hear that. I think that sounds about right. This feels like a slate where I'm going to be hunting for home runs. I may not stack nearly as much just because it's such a small slate, and hunt for individual plays that I think have the highest upside for home runs and hope for the best. I will say on the other side of this contest, when you do look at Homer Bailey, and I do agree with you that he's been solid and is a fine play here, any Kansas City bats for you that at least are intriguing, or guys you've enjoyed tracking this year that you think should be part of a player pool? Anybody that you'd say as a one-off or two-off, if that would be how you were constructing your lineups?
No, not really. No. You know, Bailey will give up some power from time to time, but he really hasn't been bad. It's not a good park. Like if I'm going to this game, just, you know, if this is the game that I'm going to, give me Oakland, right? Just give me Oakland. Matt Chapman is cheap. Semion's expensive. But outside of that, like this team is not expensive. Maybe Olsen too. They're really not going to cost you that much. Certainly not more than the Mets, and probably on average the same as the Rockies. So I don't really see the need to get to the Royals.
All right, let's talk about this final game, and we will move on from there. Don't forget, we are with you Monday through Saturday on the DFS Early Bird. Typically, it's Adam and EMAC Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Me and Rendon on Monday morning, myself and Lofty on Wednesday, as you're hearing now, Josh and myself on Friday morning, and not too far off in the distance, NBA is around the corner, so you'll be hearing from each of those guys as well in that regard. So plenty happening when it comes to DFS Early Bird, and we'll remind you, if you're watching on YouTube, first and foremost, thanks so much for doing so. Subscribe. That's easy. Hit that alarm bell so every time we go live, you are alerted. Leave a comment, like this video, like all the videos we have going, and make sure to share on social media. Feel free to tag us individually at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D, at Dan Strafford, at Osmo_com as well. Let's talk about this final game, and we will be through with this early slate. We take a look at the Marlins and the Diamondbacks. The Marlins are 52-98. Good on you, Miami. Diamondbacks 77-74. It is a -165 in favor of Arizona on the money line. Over under of 9. I believe last check, this entire series, the roof was supposed to be open. I know it was closed the other day. I'm seeing for a day game, it's supposed to be 103. I assume the roof will be closed for this one. So take that into mind when we're talking about offense. Alcantara v. Leak. Again, Arizona -165, over under of 9. Any interest in Leak v. Marlins here, simply because it's a short slate and the Marlins suck?
Yeah, no, I think Leak. I think Leak and Bailey will be the most popular pitchers on the slate. Put it that way. On DraftKings, where it's a 3-gamer. Alcantara really hasn't been bad. And he's coming off, a couple games ago, I think it was a really, really solid outing. But, he's got a 15% K rate against lefties, 19% against righties. This is an Arizona team that I have enough respect for to where, if it comes down to me paying $7K for Leak or 78 for Bailey or going up to 86 for Alcantara on a day where I need to get to expensive bats to win, and I believe you absolutely have to, then no, I just don't have any interest there. But yeah, Mike Leake, I certainly do, man. Miami is an atrocious team. They are a really bad team. They're bad specifically against right-handed pitching. So, while Mike Leake isn't a particularly special pitcher, the Marlins have a top 7K rate versus righties. They have a 79 WRC plus, a 129 ISO, a 289 WOBA, all of them ranking worst in the league among any team out there. Tigers have a 78 WRC plus, but way lower or way higher ISO for the Tigers, higher WOBA. The Marlins are terrible against righties, and I think you just need to grin and bear it, bite the bullet on a guy like Mike Leake.
Yep. We have talked disparagingly about Leak in the past here, whether on this podcast or podcast past with Dave and myself, but would seem like a spot that just makes too much sense to roster him. On the other side, Alcantara, every time I look at the numbers for the Arizona Diamondbacks, I am always reminded that their offense is much better than I ever thought they were. This is just simply a team that does not strike out a ton, and now that's more so against lefties than against righties. I know against righties they are not as good, but still at 21.3% against right-handers on the year. Not necessarily on the bad side of the pool when it comes to Major League offenses. Is this a game where you can find one-offs? Do you feel like on a 3-game slate you're going to have to find one-offs in this contest, or would you stay away and solely focus on Oakland and Coors Field?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too narrow-minded, right? But I think Alcantara is decent enough, and Mike Leake really has been at least somewhat impressive this year. So with Leake, he has some homer issues. So if you wanted to one-off hoping you got a homer there, on the – what was it? 7 starts ago, he allowed 4 home runs. That was against the Dodgers, though. But then he allowed 3 home runs to the Giants, then none, 1-1, 2 home runs last time out. I mean, that is his Achilles heel. He's allowed 38 home runs on the season. That's a ridiculous number. So, normally I'd be okay picking on him, or at least, getting some exposure to the opposing team on a day where I expect him to be popular. But I just don't know where Miami's power is going to come from.
Yep, that makes sense to me, and is one that is worthwhile when trying to break down a 3-game slate. If you were to play this slate 10 times out of 10, are you playing max entries? Or are you just playing it the way you always do? Or do you find this an opportunity to maybe change things up and hand build lineups or change the way you go about it?
No, I would say wait for ownership to come out. I think I have a pretty good read on this one, but I don't know yet. I would honestly, if you're playing 150, I would say I'm probably just going with the same pitchers, maybe some Alcantara, maybe like a little bit of Syndergaard, because that game was actually 0-0 tonight between the Rockies and the Mets. It was 0-0 in the top of the 6th between Melville and Stroman, who is a good pitcher. Mets just dropped 4 runs in the top of the 6th with 2 outs. But point is, sometimes these games just don't produce the way you expect them to, and Syndergaard ends up being decent. But for the most part, I think it would be Bailey and Leake up there and just rotate hitters out from those 2 games.
All right. You can where can folks find you? You have the NFL strategy shows. You have Sirius XM. Where are people finding Dave Loughran these days?
Yeah, Sirius X, Awesome Radio. Myself, Manny Laura, Saturday 5 to 7, breaking down everything for the upcoming slate. It's a fun show. And then Sunday 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, recapping everything. Also doing live action for the end of those 4 p.m. games. A lot of fun. We had 2 overtime games in week 1 already. We've had some awesome games. We get real lucky with that. It's fun to follow along and then break down everything that went right and wrong throughout the week. And then, strategy show, NFL strategy show. If you're not checking this out and you play NFL, join us every morning, Monday through Saturday, We get you ready. We recap the slate on Monday. We take a first look at salaries on Tuesday, ownership on Wednesday, full game-by-game breakdown on Thursday, building lineups, lineup construction, fantasy crunch on Friday, and then your final tune-up on Saturday. So we got you covered from Monday through Saturday. Everything you need to know for each week is on the NFL Strategy Show. That's 11 a.m. Eastern Time on youtube.com/Awesemo. It should be, right? Just /Awesemo.
I will confirm right now just before we go. Let's see. YouTube.com. You can always find Dave as well over on Twitter. As I said before, at Lofty_D, and that is LOUGHY_D. Let's see what it is. It is, in fact, not actually said on YouTube, but if you just Google YouTube Awesemo, because it gives you all the characters instead.
Yeah, just go to YouTube and type in Awesemo.
Exactly, Awesemo. And now, once you get used to typing Awesemo, you'll never spell the word awesome the right way again.
That's right.
It's fantastic. It's really worked out well for me in text messaging when my wife goes, "What the hell is Awesemo?" Like, they pay us every 2 weeks. You should know who they are. But nonetheless, find Dave, as I said, Lofty_D, LOUGHY.
It works. YouTube.com/Awesemo takes you right there.
There you go. Look,
takes you
right something new. Find me at Dan Strafford. Find Awesemo at Awesemo_com. I will say regularly, Nolan and the rest of the social crew are giving away the full boat over there on social. So you want to follow Awesemo_com, Awesemo NFL, Awesemo MLB as this season winds down, because they're giving away subscriptions, and that gets you projections. It gets you lineup builder. It gets you ownership projections. It gets you Dave's articles for the deep dive as we get into NBA season as well. So if you're signing up, you have that 3 months for free. You get end of MLB, NFL, and NBA, start of NBA. So that is a nice window to be in, along with Adam as well, writing. You get NBA. Don't forget, it's Adam. It is Dave. It is Josh. You get EMAC thrown in there. You get Ed Fear as part of that package as well. Lots to enjoy when it comes to NBA. So plenty of time to sign up. Use that promo code EARLYBIRD, 50% off, or enter one of those contests over on Twitter. With that all said, wish you the best of luck. We'll see you tomorrow morning. EMAC and Adam right here on the DFS Early Bird, presented by Awesemo.com.